Hi, everybody, and welcome back to my journey as I go through my favorites list on fanfiction.net. I know it's been a while. You'll see why when I get to the last couple stories in this video. But yeah, so for those of you that don't know, I've been reading fanfiction a lot, so I decided to reread all the stories on my favorites list on the first site that I started reading fanfiction on, see if my tastes have changed since I started reading them. I started this journey over almost 5 years ago, so it's been a long time, and I'm still got a long while to go. But those have been going on back and forth. So I've started reading these by order of publication date. I've reached, I believe, 2014 now. So let's start these stories, starting with Through the World Door by Leo Septem. Now, this is a Familiar of Zero fic crossover with High School DxD, where Saito, basically near the end of Familiar of Zero canon, actually goes back home instead of finishing the fighting or whatever that was going to happen there, only to find out that his world isn't as mundane as he originally thought it was. Turns out his homeworld actually was the High School DxD world, and then he ends up getting added to, getting added right into the starting events of the High School DxD canon, where after getting picked up by Rainier, the fallen angel, and getting into the whole Asia situation, after that he gets added to Rias's peerage, and we basically get a good straight man who is done dealing with harem bullshit after his time in Halkeginia, and now he has to deal with Issei and all this shit, which is counterbalanced by his seething hatred for slavery, because both the peerage system in DxD essentially is slavery, and this fic goes the darker route with the Familiar Zero runes, implying that it was and going in that is mind washing slavery to make them more compliant to the mages that bind them. Overall, I really enjoyed this story. It focuses a bit too much on how cool and strong Saito is in comparison to everyone else in the early canon fights of this story. But it had a lot of potential. Like, this story gets up to the Kokabale arc, which is or I guess the Excalibur arc. I don't know what it's actually called in the things, but basically it gets through the Kokabale fight and then has a little bit afterwards of what they do. I wish it had continued, because that's where the harder fights, and the author was saying that yeah, he's strong for now, but in comparison right now what he has would fall off against the gods and stuff they'd be fighting later, and that would have been interesting to see, where he's not just the amazing god all person. But I still really, really enjoyed this fic. What's here, both the comedy bits, but also Saito's and the analysis of Saito as character after dealing with all the shit that he does in Familiar Zero, which, as I've said in my stories, that I've grown to hate that kind of stuff. The whole playful abuse and shit like that has really pissed me off as time went on, and now seeing the story actually considering it as the abuse that it actually is and taking it seriously, I find, and seeing how going into a dive of how he deals with it afterwards, I find this to be really, really good. It's going to stay on my list. Next is Speed by Clell65619. This is a Harry Potter crossover with DC. It's the crossover in a sense is rather minor. It's more just a power up fic, but basically Ron is cousins with Wally West, and during one time a summer vacation as a kid, he ends up getting Wally's powers when he gets struck by lightning, and he gets his own speed powers while he still deals with all of the Harry Potter canon afterwards. Um, so I have my biases. Everybody has their biases of what fics they normally look at, what characters they normally go to, and I'll fully admit I'm pretty much a main hero, main timeline guy who likes looking for if when I'm reading Harry Potter fics, I usually want Harry to be the main character. If I'm reading Naruto fics, I usually want Naruto to be the main character. So I don't really read a lot of Ron centric fics, but this is really really good. Um, I like this author a lot, and I have a bunch of other fics that he's read on my list, like previously. So this one I feel is really good, and it's also concise and gets to its fucking point, which I've grown a much newer appreciation of. Ron gets super speed, and it affects the story both more and less than you'd think. Less because most of the first 5 years of Hogwarts still end up going pretty much the same as canon, but more because having speed and access to talking to people to talk to about his emotional baggage really helps his emotional growth and changes how Ron behaves, especially in the last 2 years. Ron actually goes on a journey that feels earned and feels like growth. It makes me enjoy him as a character more than just a sidekick like I normally do. And I highly recommend this story, and it's going to stay on my list. Number 3 is Marbles by Katana Black. This is a Final Fantasy VII fic where basically Sephiroth, just a little bit before the Nibelheim mission of canon, decides to go bugfuck crazy and jump on the crazy train and drag Cloud and Zack with him to Nibelheim to purposely burn it all to the ground or stuff like that, with his mind. It's just really good crack. I really enjoy it. There's a lot of fun characterizations of characters that we normally only see as very, very serious people, and it all wraps up really nicely and quickly as opposed to meandering forever. Basically, if you want just a fun little stupid fic of Final Fantasy VII insanity where it just dives into being ridiculous, you'll really enjoy this. I did a lot. It's going to stay on my list. Number 4 is Dead Serious by Rorschach's Blot. As always, I love Rorschach's Blot, his stuff, and this is a great story. Sure, nice one shot that takes place after the summer after Order of the Phoenix, where Sirius Black died, but his ghost will come back to make sure Harry gets the best summer ever. It's just a nice bit of crack that has Sirius acting way crazier than we ever really thought, and truly dedicated to all things involving sex and getting Harry laid. It's really just a fun, nice little thing for a good quick laugh. I really enjoy it, as I enjoy a lot of this author stuff. It's going to stay on my list. Number 5 is Naruto RPG Life Sucks by Ilias Edge. And this is another gamer Naruto fic that really just seemed to bore me. You'd think it'd be interesting because it basically starts the day after the graduation where he becomes a Genin, and right after that he quits becoming a Konoha ninja and goes to go around the world and stuff and make his own team with various other demon containers that he finds. It just never clicked. The story still ties itself in knots to get Naruto into the canon missions of Wave and the Chunin exams and stuff, and the video game aspects are trying to be ridiculous and crazy, but also come off more as an explanation for random lazy contrivances. Basically, if it wanted to make it crazy, it should have gone crazier. It just doesn't really work. It for an example, at one point he's just Naruto's walking down Konoha Street, and then Smith just pulls him up and says, "Hey, do you want to be a smith? We got to be an awesome smith and do this and learn smithing with me." And then he learns it all in the span of an afternoon. And then it just moves on. But it's not too over. It's more just, it's instead of, even the way I said it is more ridiculous sounding than it was in the story. But then because of that lack of ridiculousness, it becomes like, okay, why would this guy just do that? And it doesn't actually have a game thing. It's not like quest appearing or anything. It's just a random person coming over. And it just feels boring. Like, the gamer setup really just seems like as a lazier way to give him more things, when I know like the whole point of the gamer setup is like casual power creep and like power ups, stuff like that, but it really just feels unearned and like also lazy. It's also just not really funny, like to me at least. I didn't find it that enjoyable. There's better gamer fix out there. This one's gonna fall off my list. And now we come to the two reasons why this video took so long. Um, Both of these next stories are by Vimes Enthusiast. Um, I had a lot of these stories on my list. I've talked about a couple of them previously. The first one is Gods and Devils and Wild Horses, oh my. And this one, like, this one had not been updated in 2.5 years. But when I go to read it, boom, another 20,000 words that I need to go through when I'm going to be reading this thing. Like, fucking. Well, let's go in. Like, so first of all, this one was a lot easier to read than the last story, A Third Path to the Future, by this author. And the two main reasons for this is that, one, this one focuses a lot more on comedy than the other one did. And two, it focuses only on like a small main cast of characters, as opposed to every single person who exists in the universe at this time. I didn't mention this is a Ranma and High School DxD crossover. And I really think it works well. The Ranma universe actually fits in, and Ranma himself like fits in nicely with the casual like power up and insanity that is High School DxD. There's a couple other crossovers like High School of the Dead, which also seem to fit in pretty seamlessly. Ranma also gets his libido unlocked here, so the actual horniness of DxD actually, influences him, not just being like the whole crazy, oh no, I'm only martial arts and nothing else matters thing. So he's more than just a prop for the comedy bits. He actually interacts with the harem shenanigans going on now and stuff like that. I really enjoyed this a lot. Like, the characters all feel pretty good, and like I said, they all fit in really well. Ranma's family that's being involved in this is all actually getting room to grow as well. And with the surprise update, I can't wait to see it continue even more. So yeah, stays on my list. And finally, we have Wild Wolf by Vimes Enthusiast. Yeah, this is the main one that why this video took so goddamn long. Look at that word count. It's 1.2. It's basically 1.2 million words. That's a lot. And also, to put it like, this thing really intimidated me. I'm pretty sure I would put off reading this for a week before I even started it. But I did love it, which is also why it took so long. Like, again, let me put into why this thing is so intimidating. Like, well, let me just go. Like, the reason why I even continued reading this is probably my first introduction to Game of Thrones. Like, I knew you're saying like, oh, this thing was made in 2014. Like, how you like? Yeah, I knew the show existed. The show was fucking huge at the time, and everybody knows about it. So like, yeah, I knew the show existed as a property. I knew it was things, but I never watched it. I've never seen the show. I've never read the books, so I didn't know. So this was really, I think, the first Song of Ice and Fire or Game of Thrones thing that I really read. So this was my first intro to the world of Westeros. And that's kind of why I wanted to keep reading again. And the content here just kept me engaged throughout the entire story. Ranma, it's a Ranma crossover with Westeros. And Ranma gets basically pulled in by the old gods of Westeros because they need a champion, and Westeros is pretty much fucked by their future. So they're like, okay, let's replace somebody. Robb Stark. Ranma, you're essentially replacing Robb Stark. And that causes a hell of a lot of changes. And it leads to a very, very different Westeros than, most people who've read the books and stuff would know. I know a bit more because I've seen now, as time went on, I've seen further things, so I know a bit more of how Westeros is, and like the Game of Thrones canon is supposed to go. So I now have a better appreciation for what actually changed. And I think the fans of the show will really enjoy this because of how different it is. But the main problem with this thing is its fucking chapter size and length. Like, I find like I've found as I've read, like, even if a story is long, like, because I've read now many stories. I've had multiple stories on this list that are over 1,000,000 words. I've had multiple stories that are 500K words. Like, even if a story is long, how you cut up a chapter matters. It's not just the length of the story, it's the length of the chapter, because the chapters create natural stopping points, natural breathing points. And if the chapters were shorter, similar to like the previous story that he had written, where they were just like 20K words, like, think about it, 20K words is a lot. But even that would have been way more digestible than this one. This story, each chapter is basically the length of the first Harry Potter book. And that is insane when you're trying to read this. There are many times, like, because I was doing other things, I couldn't even finish a chapter in a single day. And I had to, like, and it became much harder to, like, find it and stuff. And it becomes unnerving. And because of things like that length, there are times when, like, oh, I have an hour to read. That's not enough to finish a chapter. I don't want to be caught in the middle. I don't want to start it right now. That's another reason why things got pushed. Like, it doesn't... Having the length of the chapters be this long makes it less digestible, and I can very easily see many people being put off by it just by seeing this word count and chapter ratio. But, like, aside from that, like, I think the world is great. The writing's great. The characters and the machinations, the plans of the Game of Thrones are all wonderful. Even though the writer jumps to many, many characters in this story, it's still less and more manageable than A Third Path to the Future, because, one, they don't jump to every single fucking person that exists or even has a single scene, and we don't get a 17-page backstory for this one person that only exists for a little bit. Like, and two, like, a lot of the times the people that they jump to last for much more, so it's a consistent thing, so we don't get those introductions every single time. Like, it's really enjoyable. Like, granted, there are some other problems. Like, one, it does end really, really abruptly. Like, for the fact that this guy writes books for every single chapter, the ending of the story is just like, hey, White Walkers fighting, and then, hey, we found this one MacGuffin, boom! All the people that are here go away, and the White Walkers go back to their caves or whatever, and yay, the world is saved. It's like, what? Like, no, they're still out there. And then it's like, then for an epilogue, considering what this guy writes, he wrote like 4 paragraphs of an epilogue. That's it. And it's like nothing that's like, hey, there will be more challenges, but they did good. Like, that felt super underwhelming for all the shit that had been going on for how the rest of the story went. But still, the fights and, like, the descriptions of the cavalry stuff, how all the, battles and the war of the 5 kings and whatever things go, it's all still interesting. And I think if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, are not intimidated by the word count, you'll get a very interesting story that, yes, stumbles a little bit at the end, but hey, would it really be a Game of Thrones thing if it didn't do that? But yeah, it stays on my list. So there we have it. 7 more stories. Fan fiction status time. I've now read 1,042 stories from my list, and 485 of them have managed to stay on. So there we go. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I will leave links in the description down below. And as always, and links to a bunch of other things like the playlist for these videos, my profile, and stuff like that. The next video is probably going to be a while. Maybe not, like, I hope not as long as this, but I do have 2 500,000 word stories that I have to read for my next video, so we'll see. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.